Tell me what people have wrong about Australian wine.
Yeah, there's a huge, misperception about, Australian wine and what it is and really what it is today.
Yeah.
Winemaking over the last, 20 or 30 years has changed a hell of a lot. If we think about what was here in America in our heyday, that has, completely, flipped the switch.
Yeah.
We were making pretty big, monstrous, high-octane Cabernet, Shiraz, and blends, and now today we're making light, bright, crunchy, high-acid wines from cool climates, so it's changed incredibly.
So I used to live in Singapore. I used to live in Southeast Asia where we get a lot of these high-quality Australian wines. You don't get as many here in the America. Well, thanks to you, we'll get more, but people don't understand how big Australia is. I mean, it's bigger than continental Europe when they think of a big hot desert, right? But there's a lot of cool climates, right? Yarra, Macedon Ranges, Pemberton.
Yeah, absolutely. Adelaide Hills is probably the, one hot spot right now for making these sort of more sort of elegant, stylish, sort of more lo-fi, natty sort of wines.
Yeah.
Australia's, very diverse. We have a coastal influence. We have, some pretty warm climates like the floor of the Barossa. We've got interesting stuff in the soil, and we can really have a conversation about terroir in Australia, no question.
Before we taste the first wine, what kind of, people think of the old days as like yellowtail Shiraz or just big, bold Shirazes. What varieties have really caught on, you think?
The Italian varietals, I think, in Australia have really, really done well. It is getting warmer, climate change is real. So we're looking at these sort of disease-resistant Italian varietals that do well in these sort of warmer climates. Stuff like Nebbiolo or Fiano, for example, is like, it's...
I'm sure it does great in that weather down there, right?
Oh, yeah. But it does quite well in the cooler climates as well. The wines are, higher acid, got a lot more aromatics and just really interesting.
Let's start by tasting one of the wines, and we can just talk about you and Australian wine in general, because I'm excited. I love Australian wines, and I don't get the chance to taste as much of them as I want to because the availability isn't as big as when I lived in the Asian Pacific Rim. So let's taste something. What do you want to start with?
If we're going to go to Australia to start, we should probably have a look at Das Juice, which is a red wine coming from McLaren Vale in South Australia. This is a classic example of what we call a smashable red in Australia.
That is better than glit wine, a smashable red.
Yeah. I sort of coined the term Barbie glue. Just a wine that would take to a barbecue and, chill it down and, just easy drinking. Wines that are low alcohol, high acidity.
12.2. Let's open. We're gonna open. Are you gonna pour it?
Yeah, we better open it.
Okay. I love Australian minimal intervention natural producers. Like make some of the cleanest natural wines in the world. Like you Aussies really know how to do it. That's my opinion of them, the ones that I've had.
Yeah, natural wines is a pretty broad term. It means different things to different people. But I think if we think about the consumer in Australia, they're a little bit more health conscious.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's sort of taken off so much, and I think that's starting to happen here in North America as well. People are drinking more consciously. They're thinking about how they're going to feel the next day. So these sort of lighter sort of styles are a little bit more attractive, and of course, the additives. So nothing.
Will you hand me a spittoon so we don't get all toasty in the morning?
You better do that. It is 10 o'clock in the morning, so...
McLaren Vale, we're talking Grenache, we're talking Shiraz, or we're talking weird grapes?
So this is Cabernet Franc, a little bit of Merlot. So coming off various sites. And one thing that is, a lot of people don't really understand about Australia is we have a lot of freedom in winemaking. We're not bound by AOC or DOC laws. We can, use technology, we can blend across different regions, we can use, different varietals, and we can blend. And I think that is what really makes Australia a country which is, somewhat like no other. There's a lot of winemaking involved.
I used to think, lately we're talking about varieties that are doing well, I used to think of Chardonnay in Australia as being buttery and just big, and I've been tasting some killer Chardonnays from Australia lately.
No, I mean, there's no one real varietal. I mean, Shiraz was a huge thing, and there's still beautiful Shiraz in Australia. A lot of them are, more like Northern Rhone in style than what we had here in the US years ago. And, they are exciting wines, but there's just so many varietals, so many regions, so much great winemaking, and of course history in Australia. A lot of people don't really understand that we have the oldest vines.
Some of the oldest vines in California and Australia are like the oldest vines in the world, not Europe.
Yeah.
Let's. This smells awesome. This definitely smells crushable. I love the Aussie producers too, are not afraid to, or even we have some New Zealand wines too, right? Not afraid to make cool labels, friendly labels.
Yeah, I think packaging is super important. I mean, a lot of time it's got to sell off the shelf and there's no one there,
That is a kit. That's like, the natural wines became, obviously you were in New York for some time, those trendy like wine bars, with the hipster wine bars where sometimes the wines are too funky. This tastes like a minimal intervention wine, but it's squeaky clean and it's just, it is crushable. You could chill this, right?
Oh, no question. I think for me and, being an importer of Australian and New Zealand wines, I don't want to push the boundaries. I want to, make it easy to understand for the new consumer. And I think that's where a lot of work needs to be done. We're seeing a big downturn in wine sales in North America. There's big commercially manipulated wines are tough on people, and it's tough on the environment, and it's tough on a lot of things. But I think here is we're looking after the environment. You're looking after yourself a little bit, and I think you can drink more consciously.
This has a little bit of tannin. Aussies usually shy away from tannins. I have a good friend, Andrew Jefford. He's a writer, famous writer. He lived in Australia for a while. And he's like, Aussies don't like tannins, and I love tannins.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe some of those like big juicy Shiraz, they're really fruit forward, and they didn't have a lot of tannin structure. They didn't have a lot of acidity. A lot of those sort of fruit bomb wines are sort of made and manipulated for this market and for the publication, for Robert Parker, chasing the points. But yeah, the wine's, very textured on the palate, going through carbonic, but yeah, it has this sort of fine drying tannin behind it, and it's quite nice. It's
sour. Anytime that wine can go sour cheer on me, I'm all in. Yeah. So we're with Anthony Alpart, by the way, his Anthony Alpart selections. What? You were in New York for a while. What were you doing in New York?
Yeah, I was importing and distributing in New York for, a good part of 15 years or so. Learned a lot, got to work with a lot of amazing people, and really cut my teeth on the world of wine. I grew up in Australia in retail, and then got some opportunity to travel, and then fell in love with New York. And I felt if I'm going to be a part of this industry, I need to understand it globally, and New York was a place for that.
How long were you in New York?
About 15 years.
What's this retail for? This is crushable.
It's about $20.
That's a great buy at that price point, because high quality the minimum wage is high in Australia, right? So it's expensive. Nicer wines tend to be more expensive, but that's killer at that price.
We do have a pretty stable dollar relationship right now, which is helping.
This is the opposite of what people think of Australian red is. It's just
absolutely
juicy. It's delicious.
Yep.
This is a fun wine. I'm really liking it. Let's try another one before we.
All right, let's taste. Let's have a look at this Gamay.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. I've never tasted an Australian Gamay. I've had a lot of Aussie wines. I haven't had Australian Gamay before. First time for everything.
There's not a lot of Gamay. There's a little bit, planted. I've noticed a few more wineries popping up, making small quantities for like a cellar door experience, or for some restaurant business. I think the influence of international wines in Australia and New Zealand is sort of, winemakers are responding to that. The consumer in Australia and New Zealand, that they want to try new things.
Got it.
It's quite diverse.
I've noticed all these labels are fun. Are these all special labels, or these are all like the winery's normal portfolio labels?
Yeah, so this is Seasaw Winery, who's in Orange in New South Wales.
Yeah.
So this is high altitude winemaking. It's 900 meters above sea level. on sort of ancient volcanic soils. And yeah, the team here is, they're about having fun and,
Is it the same here?
being
Seasaw?
quite-
Is this Seasaw wines?
that one is Das Juice.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's more of a winemaking project where Seasaw is an actual
Got the estate.
winery, estate grown, all certified, organic, and they've been making organic wines here for, 30 years. I think they've been certified for maybe 15 or 20.
This is eye-opening for me, you know what? Because Australian Reds, the giveaway note for me usually, like conventional Australian Reds, is the pine menthol. I can just pick it out blind like all the time.
Yeah.
Although I have made some mistakes on those.
No, that eucalyptus is, very evident in parts of South Australia.
Yeah. But I get it in Margaret River too.
Yeah, I do. I do also, probably more in Cabernet wines or Shiraz. Yeah.
So this smells awesome. This
Yeah.
smells flinty. This smells more Aussie Pinot-esque, even though it's Gamay, right?
Yeah.
The red fruits and the...
Yeah, I mean, Aussie Pinot can be more sort of, generally speaking, from say orange, really sort of light and elegant, more red fruits. Where we go to say Victoria or even parts of South Australia, there's sort of more darker fruits. So this is, known for its elegance
And the acidity, man, is popping on this. What's the alcohol here?
Should be like 12.
They have Gamay and bush vines then, like they do in Beaujolais?
No, these are all trained vines, young vines, 7 to 10 years old. So they're all babies, but for this sort of fresh, sort of carbonic style, works quite well.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
These two wines you gave me so far, these are the type. There are wines that are like going to get higher scores in competitions or more complex. I tell people on the show, this is the stuff I want to drink. I want to drink Riesling, I want to drink Champagne, and I want to drink reds that are medium body, juicy, but people cared about making them.
Yeah.
Right?
Being in the industry for 30 odd years now, it's like all roads used to lead to like Burgundy. Now that that's not accessible anymore, well, really not at the top. There are other options, elegant Pinots out of Oregon and California, and, certainly Pinots from, Australia or New Zealand. There's some value to be had. You've just got to dig deep and find them, or these sort of light, sort of crunchy reds that, you can appreciate.
This is, what's the retail going to be on this?
That one's probably closer to like 30.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is delicious.
It's a couple of hundred cases, so it's, it's not everywhere.
I started out in the natural wine world. That's where my career started. So there was that whole story because Orange County wanted to get rid of the term orange wine because they have the wines from Orange County, right?
Right. Yeah, the wine region, orange, and they make orange wines. It's the same puzzle.
You don't have to sell me because I'm already sold, but sell the people who are listening Aussie Pinot because this kind of reminds me a little bit of it. It's got a little more tannin than Aussie Pinot, but
yeah, I think we don't get a lot of it in the US, so it's hard to sell it because it's not here.
yeah.
But domestically in Australia, there's a dozen what I think are world-class Pinot Noir producers. Gary Farr is probably the pinnacle for me.
Those are magical wines.
Yeah, I mean, he's earned his chops in Burgundy and adopted some technique that really works in Geelong and Victoria, and there are many others, of course. But that for me is really the benchmark.
I actually had recently in a blind tasting, it did really well, both their ones, and I've known them for a while. One of the MWs down there, Sean Smith's project, both his Toe Puddle in Tasmania, and his basic Sean Smith for Adelaide Hills was awesome in a blind tasting. I was really impressed.
I've probably been gone from Australia too long now to like really be ingrained with what's happening there. But Toe Puddles, that's
Really impressive stuff. What?
they're not always accessible. Some of those wines from Tasmania, we're talking Burgundy prices.
Do you bring in Tasmanian wines?
I don't currently, no. I've just got back into Australia a little over a year ago.
Okay.
I started my business with New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
And then, just needed to put the Aussie hat back on. They went through a lot of hardship with the tariff from China.
With China, yeah.
And I just felt it was time to, do what I can and, have some fun and, work with some producers who I used to work with years ago, and then find some cool, fun stuff to work with.
A funny thing, not related to wine. When I was traveling through New Zealand, when I was backpacking, this was after graduate school, the people were telling me, this is how you know the difference between an Aussie and a Kiwi accent. Just ask them fish and chips. Aussies are fish and chips, and Kiwis are fish and chips. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true.
Let's taste another. The first wine was a crushable wine. This, it's delicious. This really has some character, and I'm very impressed by this wine. This Gamay.
No, I think it's a great food wine. Anything with a bit of fat or a bird or.
Okay. Are we gonna drink taste a Kiwi wine? Because we can talk about New Zealand. It's a.
Yeah, let's.
Or are we gonna go stick with Aussie here?
Do you want to try a New Zealand Pinot?
Yes. Okay. So from where?
We might have to get the Corov in.
This is from Nelson. I always thought that Nelson would be way too wet to produce great wines. I traveled through New Zealand for 7 weeks. It was the first country that when I was traveling around the world that I thought, you know what, I don't really have to come back. I saw like a lot of the country, but now that I'm working in wine, now I want to go back.
Yeah, Nelson is very much in the shadows of obviously Marlborough.
Well, it's right next to Marlborough, for people that don't know, right?
Yep. So north of the South Island, there's a lot of Pinot being made everywhere.
Yeah.
From big, sort of ageable wines, maybe down in the south in central Otago, and then sort of maybe more elegant sort of styles in Marlborough, and then some beautiful Pinots from Nelson and Martinborough, south.
Martinborough's my favorite region.
Oh yeah.
What? You're Aussie, but why did you start out with Kiwi wine? Isn't that like anti-patriotic?
It is, but a lot of people ask me that question. My stepfamily is from Dunedin in the South Island.
Oh, where the penguins are.
Yeah.
I've been. Half Kiwi, half Aussie, or?
No, I'm 100% Aussie, but stepfamily Kiwi. Yeah.
Well, it's so funny. When I first went to New Zealand, Flight of the Conchords was just starting to get big.
Oh man.
And I thought it was funny, like when I was in the U.S. But when I went to New Zealand, I was like, "Oh my God, I get it!
Oh yeah,
I really get it." Let's give this a smell here. Smells this. Sometimes it's so funny. Blind, I would even maybe call the Gamay maybe New Zealand, because New Zealand they like the reduction on their Pinots and they can get quite flinty. This just smells like pure Pinot.
Yep. So this is a really interesting project. Each clone is handled separately, aged separately, and then aging in separate barrels into bottle after blending. And it's again a really tiny project, but it's just really sort of showcasing these sort of clay soils that Nelson is known for.
Oceanic Pinots, for me, they're going to either range on the spectrum of fruity, or they go to more reduction, maybe can have some earthy mineral notes. So this is pretty fruity. And I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm saying that it's like just smells like good, enjoyable Pinot Noir.
Yeah, it's probably more savory on the palate.
Let's try.
For me.
There is a bit, I wanted to disagree with you because it's always better when you disagree with wine people, not to always agree. There is a leathery, I hate to say it like this, and people are like coat to bone type note to it a little bit.
Well, there's no question about that. I mean, look, a lot of people say it's Burgundian in style, and it's just like the easiest place to go when we're talking about Pinot Noir. But to be honest, this is New Zealand Pinot Noir. It's not anything else.
Yeah.
And
this is quite New Zealand Pinot Noir. People have seen on the show, I'm a big fan of Martinborough. That's probably my favorite region, but I feel like a lot of New Zealand Pinot Noirs are like going through the motions. They're just, this is actually, I'm guessing this is expensive. This is pretty classy stuff.
Yeah, it's probably, maybe $40 on the shelf.
Oh, that's worth it for, especially the price of
$40.
Pinot. This price of Pinot now.
Yeah, and this will open up. Probably needs a little bit of oxygen to wake it up, but...
So you're the patriot, but you started out in New Zealand. New Zealand Pinot or Aussie Pinot?
That's so
Put you on the spot here.
I don't know. Just I don't know. I have to say maybe some of the Australian Pinots are probably can be a little bit more interesting. I've probably tasted a lot more Australian Pinots, and I think they've come a long way in the 20-odd years that I was sort of a little bit more ingrained in it. And I think, producers, who we mentioned earlier, whether it be Toll Puddle or Gary Farr, I think those wines can hold up next to, some of the top Burgundy producers.
Here's my hot take. You can tell me if I'm wrong or not, since you got more experience in the region. For me, I think Australian Pinot, there's more diversity, and I find it interesting. But I think I've tasted at the top end, especially from Martinborough. Some of the top Pinots I've had, besides Far, have been Martinborough Pinots.
Yeah.
That's just my perception, but Martinborough's like tiny. Right?
Yeah, we have a producer, winemaker Daniel Brennan. He has a beautiful little Pinot called Decibal. Unfortunately, it's not here today, but I'll let you try it and you can have a look at that.
That's great, man. I mean, is this a popular for Nelson? Like,
yeah, I mean,
what's the national park there? I hiked it. I can't, but Abel Tasman.
Oh,
Abel Tasman. I
Yep.
did. Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, my quest is, unearthing things, My real goal with the business was sort of to expand and elevate the down under category, Australia and New Zealand, and you can't do it with the sameness in Marlborough, Sauvignon Blanc, and you've got to dig really deep and showcase a country and its regions and to give some perspective. And so Nelson becomes an important part of the conversation. They can make beautiful Chardonnay and Pinot Noirs, and then a lot of fun natural wines as well.
So I have to say, first of all, that this Nelson Pinot Noir was a revelation for me. I don't think I've had like a really moving wine from Nelson. So that's really exceptional.
Yeah, it's a great little producer, and just doing all the right things. The wine's made in the vineyard, and they're handling everything separately, clone-wise and barrel-wise, and then blending it up together, spending some time in stainless together in some cases, and then a year or so in bottle before release, and the wines are smart.
What I've noticed, because I met you at the tasting in Ann Arbor, like a tasting for the trade, you're doing almost all minimal intervention wines, right? Or
Yeah, mostly it's becoming more and more part of the conversation. I think for my portfolio, we do have some more conventional winemaking where there's not a certification in the vineyard, but we're finding that the industry is starting to change, and I think the consumer is really helping with that sort of drive as well. People are drinking less, they're drinking more health consciously, and I think that sort of leans more into the sort of more natty, sort of organic side of the book.
Do you think that's something that New Zealand's winning with Sauvignon Blanc. They've always won that way, but do you think that's a way that these oceanic countries can win and compete in a really a competitive marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Natural lo-fi organic producers tend to be a lot smaller, and they don't produce a lot. So when you think about the overall consumption, it's not even 0.5%. So, it's tough, but I think it's starting to be a lot more accessible. There's a lot more information. People like yourself on the internet, there's information is more accessible, so people, can seek it out. And
have you found, because you're here in the weeds with, there's all the talk, the doom and gloom in the wine industry as consumption goes down.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that, or are you seeing if there's good, high quality product at a good price that there's not a...
I think the downturn is with the big production, mostly out of California. I think some of the pricing out of there might have been inflated a little bit.
A little bit, especially the North Coast.
Yeah, so for guys like this, it sort of becomes an opportunity. We might look at it, we might work a little bit harder. But the fact is that these sort of style of wines, are really growing, and this part of the wine category is kind of on fire.
That's actually encouraging to hear, especially as a wine person. In Constellation, everybody's selling off their cheap label, and younger people do will spend on wine. Maybe they're not buying cases and cases of the classics like their grandfather or their father did. Yep. So I think this is. I mean, it's just more accounts you have to manage, though, right? Because they don't buy as much quantity. So let's taste. I'm glad to hear that, though. So I've heard that from some people in the biz too. If you're selling a high quality product you believe in, you don't have to be all doom and gloom.
Yeah, I think these wines are fun and exciting. They're exciting to go out and sell and to tell the story, and the retailer or som or restaurateur can go out and do the same, and these wines are memorable.
I wanted to talk about the Aussies are not afraid. Especially I've noticed not even the classic guys, but minimal intervention guys to have fun, cool labels that like the Europeans sometimes are a little push back on a little bit.
Yep. Again, part of that thing in Australia or New Zealand where we're not sort of bound by the laws and we're not bound by, generational tradition, we can have fun with wine. They can be, not so serious on the label and serious in the bottle. But I think, curiosity on the shelf helps, and, a bit of loud packaging, goes a long way.
I love Aussie wine culture because it's like there's a high per capita consumption, fairly high, because you produce a lot of wine. And the winemakers just want to have fun, and Aussies are great drinkers. Yeah. Good or bad, I don't know, sometimes it can be bad.
Drinking is very much part of the Australian culture. Drinking wine, we grow up drinking wine and around wineries. And so, it's very much ingrained in us. It's not like you're allowed to start drinking when you're 21. It happens... as part of the culture, as opposed to, all right, you're 21 now, let's get in.
This is a crazy co-ferment of Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, Viognier, Chardonnay, Malbec, Merlot, Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, and Syrah. So it's like a mix of a Blanc de Blanc and Blanc de Noir.
Yeah, so this is a project called Vandal. It's 3 masked winemakers out of Marlborough, New Zealand.
Masked, like...
They don't disclose who they are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they work for big wineries. They're under contract. And
so this is their fun. This is their artist. This is like, I'm making
project.
that to pay the bills. This is what I want to make.
Yep. So, just the kitchen sink, co-ferment.
Maybe a little bit of skin contact with the whites?
Definitely.
Because it definitely...
Yep.
This smells like, is it barrel fermented or is it just the skin contact?
This goes into neutral barrels.
Okay, so it's really nice nose. This is the type, I like rich white wines. I know you worked in, what other countries did you work with when you were in New York?
I worked with every major wine region in the world, pretty much. Mostly France and Italy, of course, and US.
This really reminds me of a Friulian white, like a bigger, richer white on the nose. Things never got weird enough. I love that.
Yeah, that's their mantra.
Are you allowed to know who they are since you're dealing with their wine?
Well, I know who one person is.
Oh, okay. So 2 of them are...
Still don't know who they are.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a fun wine.
Yeah.
And what you've shown me so far, especially when we go to the Pinot, this, and the Gamay, fun but yet serious. So you can have both consumers.
I think so. Yep.
The wine business is a little late to the party. They're still talking about millennials. Technically, I'm at the top of the millennial scale, like 42. Your wine, it looks like you're focusing more on like the younger crowd.
I think it looks like that with the labels.
Okay.
There's no question. And that is, I think my work in the wine industry, I'd like to be part of engaging with the new wine consumer. I think that's really important. And I think, for our industry that's, hurting, there's a lot of work to be done there. And, it's too easy for the new drinker to go to an RTD or, something else which, may be, more health conscious. But, we can certainly do that in the wine space. And
this reminds me a little bit of like a Blanc de Noir champagne without the bubbles, or a blonde, or like it's even got a cava. You got the clay type flavor.
Yep. Yeah, for me, with some of those sort of, it's almost like a dead yeast.
Yeah, those, but not too yeasty. Some of those wines can get crazy.
But it's got a real sort of natural feel, almost like a Jura sort of thing happening.
Jura is a great. Actually reminds me a lot of those Leasy Chardonnays coming from the Jura. That's it. So okay. Were you ever in a production? Did you ever get like interested in the production side of wine?
No. That's probably the only thing that I haven't really done in the wine business. Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to, work with winemakers and create labels and brands and do some celebrity stuff. But no, I never, really got involved in the vineyards or the winemaking process.
Me too. That's one thing I want to do. I want to work in a winery for a year, but I mean, it's kind of tough to do. You got to find the time to see the whole process. You want to try the Malbec Noveau. So
Yes.
this is fantastic. What is this coming in at?
That's about $30.
I think my favorite, I really like, and I prefer to drink whites more these days, but man, I was just really impressed with the Pinot Noir and the Gamay.
Okay.
So Malbec Noveau, so carbonic Malbec.
Yes, carbonic Malbec from Hawke's Bay in New Zealand.
Ooh, a grape.
So yeah, southeast of the North Island, there's really nobody making, Malbec as a mono-varietal. So this is winemaker Daniel Brennan, who has the Decibal Pinot from Martinborough that I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
And this is Giunta Malbec Nouveau. This is 2022.
This reminds me a lot of the minimal intervention guys doing Côte Malbec in the Loire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it smells exactly. You get it's blueberry. Some of these bigger red grapes I've been finding lately, like I just got back from Campania a couple months ago. I really like Aglianico done in the carbonic, fun style, and it doesn't smell Beaujolais Nouveau. It just smells really good. Blueberry.
Yeah. No,
There's even leather, like some leather components to it.
Yeah, I feel like we get like a lot of varietal character. If you think about Malbec, there's kind of a lot of the sameness from Argentina, and the wines can be a little bit hot and heavy. Where here it's really light and electric and fun. And
I'd rather drink this than a lot of the heavy Malbecs.
I think so.
This, this is a wine that's completely shocking me, because with these Novo style wines, or they're supposed to be fun, sometimes they're not so serious. The structure can fall apart.
Yeah.
But this has gotten more powerful. This is pretty serious.
Yep.
How much? What's this running at on the shelf?
15 to 20.
Oh my gosh!
It's a lot of wine for the money.
Is this a hot seller or this?
It is. We can move a couple of thousand cases of this wine a year, and it's truly unique to New Zealand. There's nobody else really doing anything like this, and I think this sort of style is understood across many different countries and regions. But to have a Malbec Nouveau from New Zealand is like a little bit of a unicorn.
When you think of New Zealand, obviously small production but high export price, and we make quality wines. But you also think of sameness.
Yeah.
Same Sauvignon Blanc, kind of same
absolutely.
Pinot. Everything, the three you've shown me here show how dynamic winemaking can be down there.
Yep. We're often, in New Zealand pigeonholed to be Marlborough and Sauvignon Blanc, and, a lot of it is bulk purchasing, mass production, in some cases, shipped over in bulk and bottled in California and the like, and, who knows what goes on. But, we're really trying to, build a portfolio of wines that are a reflection of a place and the people behind it. And, all the wines are, sort of made in somebody's backyard, so to speak.
Have you ever done the Blanc Wine Show in Amsterdam?
No.
I actually want to do it, because most people don't realize that's how most of the wine around the world is moved and then bottled at origin. And like you said, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know how I would go there.
I want to go because I want to show you
problem.
guys what it looks like. I want to show all the equipment and stuff like that. Yeah. Obviously, they're not the... Although I've tasted some... There's a competition around it, too. I want to judge the competition, too, just to see.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Let's take one more Aussie wine here. But this is still... What do you think? So, obviously, we've seen... I don't think New Zealand really needs a... They don't... You can answer this. You know it better than me. The country isn't really struggling moving wine, right?
It's still one of the fastest growing wine countries in the world. It produces 1% of the world's wine, which is amazing.
But the highest export price per bottle, I think, right?
Or maybe behind, France or Italy. But it's still up there. It's quite incredible. I mean, for a young region in 25, 30 years to do that is... nothing short of incredible, and it's because we make a very expressive style Sauvignon Blanc, which is unlike anything else in the world.
I actually, us wine people like to poo-poo on that style.
Yeah.
I find myself kind of enjoying it pretty. Like if somebody giving me a glass of good New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, I'm like, That's really good. That's nice.
Well, you know it's going to be half decent.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going to be in a screw cap, so it's not going to be corked.
Can we talk about how great screw caps are? You guys
can.
have it figured it out.
Yeah. Basically, this is 100% of what the wine should be with the Stelvin closure.
This is gorgeous.
You know, Australia and New Zealand have no relationship with Portugal, so there's no trading history, generational trading history. So, you know, we're getting, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade corks. 1 in 12 destroyed the wine. That's an incredible stat if you're an importer or a winery. So, yeah, long live the Stelvin.
I get sent lots of samples for review, and people ask me how many bottles, and I'm like, if it's got, I love when I know it's a Stelvin or it's DM, but I prefer Stelvin. I'm like, you only need to send one if it's Stelvin.
Yeah.
I know it's going to be. Have you ever had a corked wine, a TCA wine with a Stelvin? Some master wine told me they had one.
No, I just don't know how that's possible. I think it's probably more a winemaking fault or, something to do with the wine, not the closure.
Okay.
I have seen examples of the early days of the Stelvin closure where pressure would go down from one case to another and break the seal and it oxidize.
Yeah. So.
But I think they've resolved that. It's pretty much of course you can always chip the lip of the screw cap, but
What do you think Australia needs as a facelift? Like, I talked about before, like Bob Polinsky, our mutual friend, who I've seen on the channel, talks about most of the world in the U.S. especially isn't interested in Australian Shiraz anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at what's happening domestically with Cabernet, right? Cabernet is king, and I think Australia can deliver on value Cabernet in North America.
Oh, 100%.
I think that's where we can really, start to deliver and start to, make a difference. Right now, we've sort of got an identity crisis. We make like great low intervention wines. We make good, cool climate wines. We have all the Italian varietals, but I think the real big opportunity for Australia is with Cabernet.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I think, I told you, my mind's completely changed on Chardonnay. I've actually was fooled in a blind tasting of Burgundy tasting by a Dawson and James, a Chardonnay from Dawson James, right? From Tasmania. Almost the whole room called it Burgundy, Grand Cru.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with Australian Chardonnay. It's too lean. It's too.
They're pushing that way too much.
It's too lean here. People want that buttery, that malo. And in Australia, it's just like, we've brought over some producers, some from Margaret River, and the wines are spectacular, but they're just too lean.
That's the difference between what us wine geeks like and what the consumer wants. But these wines so far are what everybody wants. Margaret River, great value. I agree. I think I push. It's a little more well known. It's not this style portfolio like Xanadu's basic Cabernet. Yeah. I think in Asia you could get it for like under $20, which is crazy to get Cabernet at that price.
Yep, under $20 is where we can really make a difference. And if you think about, the general consumer and where they're shopping under $20, the grocery store or, I think we could like really deliver on the price quality versus, some of those, big production, commercial, sweet Cabernets.
Yeah. Is this the actual winery? Is this a special label?
So the winery is Rosabrook Winery. The wine is Pastouche. So this is a French female winemaker from
Cute
the
label.
Loire, and sort of gets the keys to the winery to sort of do her take on Margaret River Cabernet and also a Sauvignon Blanc. Unfined, unfiltered, and just really, again, hands-off winemaking.
I've never heard of this wine. Is she in Margaret River, or is she vinify somewhere else?
In Margaret River at Rosabrook Winery, their estate, and has previously done vintages with big wineries like Rosemont.
This reminds me a lot. There's some 12.5 for Cab. This is happening in Chile a lot. So there's some small producers pushing for their old vine, old school Cabernet at 12. Because this smells great. Cabernet is not my favorite grape, even though I love Bordeaux. It could be pretty austere and sometimes unpleasant to drink young, but this smells really good. It smells like Cabernet, but
Yeah.
it smells a little juicier. I like red fruited driven Cabernets, which
Yep.
I get a lot. And I love Coonawarra still.
Yeah.
I know Coonawarra has a bad rap, and it's not the most beautiful region.
I think it's the Napa Valley of Australia. There's no question. I mean, Margaret River Cabernet is amazing, but recently I've had some examples of Coonawarra Cabernet, which, you know, there may be more sort of left bank Bordeaux than Napa.
Yeah.
But the wines are, you know, they're unreal.
This has a little bit of, 21? This has a little bit of, this actually does remind me more of a Loire wine that has Cabernet Franc, but a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon, because you get those sometimes, but
Yep.
they're a little bit leaner.
Yep.
It smells great. I even get some olive type notes. Is there any Aussie producer I've never tasted before that actually is making wine with Brett, like seeks to have it? Like there's a guy in Nap, like Cane 5, they want to have Brett in their wines.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, there's natural winemaking, then there's pushing the boundaries, and then there's stupidity. So for me, intentional Brett wines is, I don't know, it's a fault.
So are you working in wine for so long? You're anti-Brett.
I mean, I don't mind it and I understand it, but not everybody does, and that's the problem. So if you want to make natural wines that are bready and, you know, and you're trying to attract, a consumer, then you're taking a risk.
Again, a wine that shows approachability, but has some tannins, has some seriousness to it.
Yeah.
What were we looking at for this on the shelf?
That's like $25.
Yeah, like that's just delicious cab at that price. That's pretty much unheard of.
Yep.
That's just gorgeous stuff. Wow. Thanks for showing me some great wines. By the way, these are like really wonderful, fun wines.
There's a lot to offer, and I think generally speaking about Australia and New Zealand, we can offer, what every other major wine producing country can deliver on, whether it be Italy or France in the old world. We have it. You've just got to seek it out. We sort of described it as fun yet serious, and I think that's what works well. And of course, value. I mean, these wines are, pretty much under $30.
Oh, they're all fantastic, especially, and it's really hard to get. Prices keep rising with price of cork, bottle. Well, not cork in this case, but bottle, Stelvin, all that kind of stuff. So, thanks. Where can people find you? I'll put your website in the description box. I mean, you're an importer, so you're not going to have first contact with you, but I'll put the wines up too. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.